And we are, I suppose we're live. Let me click on the. I've never figured out how to do this. Are we live?
Yes, we are.
Yep. There you go.
I'm gonna mute us. All right. So we've got some people watching. That's good. So yeah, we have a bit of a lighter crew today. But everyone who was at the last live stream knows Thomas. He is our operations coordinator. There's myself, and I talk too much, so I'm just going to skip over me. And then everybody, I'm sure, knows Marley. And here we have Alex. So Alex is our, what's your lead designer? Senior graphic designer. That looks nice on business cards.
Oh, it does.
And in addition to being our senior graphic designer, Alex also does design work on the side as a freelancer and has experience with freelancing and contract work and all of that. So she is going to kind of just lead us through a little mini seminar about freelancing. Guys, as usual, if you've got any questions while we do this, please feel free to jump in, ask questions. Marley and Thomas will be kind of keeping an eye on the live chat. I won't because I don't have my computer with me and my glasses are at home.
Yep, but we're here.
We are here. Do we want to give people like, I don't know, 3 more minutes to kind of show up?
Yeah, sure.
Say so.
I'm going to use this opportunity to plug the Channel Frederator Discord server.
Yes.
You should all go join it.
We have a good amount of people there right now.
We've got over 100 members, right?
I think we're close to like almost 150, I think, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's like pretty active too.
Yeah. So I see people in there all the time.
Oh, here's Mr. Nick Reed.
And Kenny.
Oh, wow.
Kenny, there might not be anywhere for.
coming too.
There's not places for everybody to sit.
That's the team.
Well, we can make Joe sit on the mini fridge, I guess. Kenny can sit on the mini fridge.
Who's here? Oh, Alpanac is here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's nasty, gross coffee. I don't know when that was left there.
All right, so the room's gotten a little fuller.
Right.
You have, you guys all know Nick, know Kenny, and
I
Joe.
will let you
Say
have
hi
it.
to the live stream.
Well, yeah, see,
Lean into, yeah, here, come around over here.
Just wave.
Oh yeah, it is.
it's the
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
like you're just walking in, like.
it's lagging, right?
Yeah, that's what it's gonna do.
This is Joe. He's the new talent operations intern. He's helping me and Nick out.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like a little bit laggy, but it's cool.
It always light. I don't think that light works.
I think it did.
No, wait.
Oh, it did.
does.
It did. Turn it on.
It
See, it's a very slightly lighter color.
It sets the atmosphere.
been like leaking and water, and
Oh, yay.
this is kind of dangerous. But
What
that's
a-
probably why it's not working.
What a great room.
Right? I feel very safe.
Mhm. All right. Well, now that I guess everybody is here, we can get started. So, Alex and team, I have printed up some just basic questions, and we're just like usual. We're gonna go around and ask them, and Alex will answer. And then if anybody else wants to chime in and talk, we can do that. And if you've got any questions, ask them, and we will get to them as they come up or at the end, whichever we want. So Alex, I'm gonna start off with the first question, which is, when did you first start doing like freelance work?
Well, I actually started dabbling in freelance during college. Obviously it was hard to manage with a very large work, but I was like, I'm gonna do my own thing. But also, like, people are like, oh, I heard you're studying design. Could you make this logo for me? I was like, yeah, I could do that. I just learned how to do that yesterday. Cool. But I got more into it when I first like graduated because I actually didn't get a full-time gig until like a year after graduation. So I was working at the Cheesecake Factory, and I was like, I don't want my skills to like just be cheesecake. So, so I definitely started ramping up my freelance and learned a lot of hard lessons in the beginning. But here I am today.
Right.
You like cheesecake, by the way?
I do, but I have not been back to the Cheesecake Factory since I quit. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. No, actually, I'm not here to plug the Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah. You want to tell us about what they really put in their cheesecake?
They don't want to know.
Brought to you
actually.
by the
Cheesecake
Cheesecake
Factory.
Use discount code
Junior
Fred.
cheesecake is the best.
Oh yeah.
If
that's
you're in
not
New York
bad.
City, it's
Yeah.
a sponsored live stream by the way.
Oh my God.
Junior cheesecake, New York City, Brooklyn, New York. Check it out.
Oh my
Promo
gosh.
code Fredder.
Let's just talk about cheesecake.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about those hard lessons you learned in
Yes.
the first year that you were a freelancer. But let's go on to Thomas and the second question.
Sure, thanks. So, when did you first create your portfolio, and what advice do you have for anyone creating any portfolios or demo reels for the purpose of finding work?
Well, I definitely created my first portfolio in college because they try to teach you how to like market yourself, but not enough, at least at my school. But either way, like it was a web design class. We had to build a website for ourselves, and that's like the beginning of a portfolio. I mean, not including like the art portfolio you do in high school. Like this is like the real deal where like I can actually show people who are hiring or like full-time or just freelance gigs. So I guess like the biggest advice I have for making a portfolio is always like continue to update it. You don't want your stuff, like if you've been out of college for like X amount of time, you don't want like a project you did in a class still there. Like, yeah, it still might be really cool, but like you want to really show that you're still active, like in the field, you're trying new things, you're expanding your style. And honestly, if you're not like kind of evolving as an artist, you should really rethink that. You know, you should always show that like with every freelance gig, you're like, look at what I did like just last project and what I did now. Like it shows growth. And I think that speaks a lot to like what people expect or can anticipate about your the quality of your work. It's always improving, and that's super appealing. Like right now, I'd say my portfolio is like very brand heavy because I wanted to be like, well, I love branding. I want to be hired for those gigs, but also you don't want to limit yourself. So like I still need to add like a whole bunch of other stuff I do. Like my freelance is primarily in the comic book industry, and I don't have anything in my portfolio that reflects that, so I need to change that. But it shows like a range of your skills, and it doesn't just confine you into like this one gig. So
Is it mandatory? Sorry, is it mandatory to, I guess within your portfolio, have like gigs versus like your own personal stuff?
no, you should have both. Yeah, I definitely have like illustration work that I just did for fun in there because like I don't get to really like create original illustrations in my everyday. But then someone could look at it and be like, oh, well, I need an illustration for an ad, and I love like your style. Because so then it like positions you, your brand, I guess, as an artist. Because sometimes gigs confine you to like, you have to problem solve for a client. So that's a very different objective rather than being like, well, this is the stuff I like to do just because. And like, this is where my creativity can go beyond just like a logo design. Yeah.
If you've got like a kind of a, I guess you talked about gaps in your portfolio, an identifiable gap, how would you suggest like resolving it? Like, is it worthwhile to take a class, for instance?
Yeah, definitely. I'm taking a motion graphics class soon,
Cool.
just because I don't have that skill, but you want to always add to your toolbox and have projects that reflect that. And even if like if you don't have packaging design, but you want to start getting hired for that, you can do a personal project, even if it's not real, like it's just something that you did. And like, you can be like, well, this was a problem I wanted to solve and this is how I solved it. And like, here's this beautiful product I created from it. Like it will showcase that skill that you might not have been able to do in a project because you haven't gotten that gig yet. So.
Right. No one has to know that you weren't getting paid for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You just have the vision, and that's the point. They're like, oh, well, I can see that she can do that, and that's what's important. Yeah.
All right, Joe, do you want to read a question?
Sure, yeah, my phone. Yeah. So,
Right, got you. You got a website that showcases your work and includes your biography. How has this been useful to you when it comes to finding freelance gigs?
I think it's a great resource, even like once you've gotten the client, like they're like, okay, sometimes they haven't researched you, which is problematic. Your client
It's a little
should
weird.
kind of like look
They
into
should know
what
your
you've done,
work.
right? But just in case they haven't, or they're like passing you off to like a recommendation or something, they're like, oh, do you have a link I can share or see what your work is? And you have it at this one like space so they can see everything that you've done, rather than like kind of send a PDF or like disjointed images, and it just makes you look a lot more professional too. And actually I've gotten gigs, not based on my website, but from my social, because I make sure I put my work, like it's mostly, I use my like Instagram and Twitter for business purposes. Like, yeah, I'll inject some of my personality, like a cute selfie every so often, but like, I mean, like, come on, you want to
gotta have
face,
that.
like, who's the girl who makes your stuff, like. So it's like kind of like you can build your brand around yourself as an artist. So like, here's my face, but here's also like some sketches. And then this is how this translated into the final design. So you kind of give like the process, and it helps people feel more involved or understand that you're not like a magician that snaps your fingers and like a design just comes up out of nowhere. So, and actually my most recent client, she had like been a fan of my work and was following me on Instagram for a couple months. And then she reached out and she like got like my information from my website, because I have my link on my social, and she reached out like by email through the website. Like she wanted me to work with her. But like, so she came specifically because she liked my stuff and I put it out there. It wasn't like, I want you to copy this artist. She was like, I like you, I want you to do your thing. So I think it's super important to like, even if you don't have a website, to really push yourself on whatever resource you can have, or even have like Behance is a Behance? What do you know? Behance. I don't know. You know the site. But like that, even people use that for a portfolio. So if you don't have a website, that's still great, because you're just putting your work out there in a space that someone can just view your range of work.
Would you say like your social media platforms are almost becoming more important than like having an actual website at this point? Because more and more I'm hearing about friends getting gigs from their Twitters or their Tumblrs or their Instagrams, then like a lot of them don't even bother updating their websites anymore.
Well, I would say prioritize your social, since that's what people spend most of their time on anyway. But it doesn't hurt to have like a professional version of that, because like you could eventually be freelancing with companies. You know, like they might not be like, okay, your social's cool and all, but like let me see like your case studies and like you know, you want it to be presentable. It's like know your audience.
Dorked here in the comments asks, are there any free web hosts you'd recommend? I'm looking into starting a portfolio.
Free? Well, Behance is a good free resource. Wix is another alternative, but I don't really like Wix. Other free alternatives. I mean, WordPress to an extent is free.
What about Squarespace or something?
Squarespace you have to pay, but it is, that's what I use for my site, and it's my favorite platform that I've used to create websites.
What is like, just, I mean, you probably haven't taken a survey or anything, but like the general cost like monthly of maintaining a website? Is it something that's doable for, you know, most people?
Yeah, actually, I mean, like sometimes you can get discounts, but like you're gonna pay at least like on an annual basis, like at least $100 a month.
Oh boy.
But I know we'll revisit this in the tax section, but you can write off those costs as tax deductibles. So it's worth it. Yeah. Because you're like, well, this is directly related to what I do. So you can justify getting money back.
Right.
So sometimes it's worth it investing in the nicer like platform.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
I like that.
I also have a website, and I just pay $10 a month to keep it up and running.
What do you use?
I use Squarespace.
You use
No,
Squarespace
I took the
too?
annual one. You made it like digestible.
Monthly.
$100.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So coming back to the free platforms, like which one works best for you?
I'd say Instagram. I love it just because like I feel like I can do refined posts, like sketches, like just I like even posting color palettes that I like and inspiration. And like hashtags are really great to like position yourself. And sometimes in Twitter, it feels like really clunky to add all those hashtags, even though that's the platform it originated on.
Yeah.
But it feels like less in your face when you've got like a big picture, then your like little description, and then like a crap ton of hashtags.
Right.
And then also like the commenting, I really like that. Like that's a great source of like conversation with other people. Being able to DM or share your profile in a private message, I feel like that's something you can't really do on Twitter.
What are some good hashtags you can use?
Oh, hashtag. Well, definitely like make it. I keep it relevant to what your post is. Like, so if I put up like an illustration, I'd be like illustration, drawing, sketch, work in progress, or if I want it to be catered to something specific, like I guess you start very general and then get very specific. Like I just research popular ones. Like I'll note like, okay, there's like a million people under this hashtag. I'm gonna put that like Black girl magic, and it's like I have a beautiful Black woman that I made an illustration of. It feels like it matches. But you definitely don't want to just put hashtags just to put them because they're popular.
Yeah, and I think with an Instagram, you can also search certain hashtags to see how many hits it has.
Exactly.
It shows you
Use that as a
before you
reference.
add them.
Yeah.
So that's nice when I'm posting photos of my cat.
Yeah.
Fluffy white cat just
Yeah.
doesn't have that many
Right.
hits. You gotta go white cat and then fluffy cat.
Right.
Right, so speaking of more website questions, Thunder28X asks, do you recommend learning HTML and web design in order to create a portfolio? Like, is that something you have to do? No.
Squarespace
That's
makes
good.
it easy for you. I mean, Wix too. Most of I feel like sites are adapting to the gap that people are like, I hate web design. Like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'll admit it. I don't have the patience to code and troubleshoot and be in forums and up late at night. Like, did that even work? Will my code break? Like, that's not me. I am not the one.
Yeah.
But like, so I feel like a lot of like popular sites are adapting. Like, you can like just create blocks and just kind of put spaces,
Templates too.
move things around. It just feels so much more approachable. So, I mean, it's a good skill to have. I've seen many jobs like, hey, if you have this skill, that's a bonus. And I'm like, I don't, but I know how to make something look pretty with the resources I have. You don't feel like you're just confined to having to know the hard code to make a good website.
I would even recommend that whatever site you use, you should make sure that you can get a responsive web design, meaning that it works across different browsers. It'll work both on desktop and on mobile, because like everyone's on mobile nowadays, and if you go into a website and then you get a desktop site on, it's ridiculous. So just make sure that whatever site you use, you're able to do both. Get you a site that can do both.
And people are actually more likely to view your portfolio at first on their phone, because people spend the most time on their phone.
Yes.
So that's such a great point.
So I believe the next question, if I hand that over to Nick, was asked by a network member, VT Animation, and it should be about setting rates, I believe.
Yes. How do you go about setting rates for your work? Have you ever had any pushback? If so, how did you handle it? I'm a great person to ask questions. You just had a whole thing,
Do you want to start?
I will.
Water first.
Oh, you're the person. I will even go into that, because first of all, I would say that you really have to understand what your work is worth and what your time is worth. I just had an occasion. I'm a photographer. I moonlight as a photographer as well, and I had an occasion where someone asked me to shoot for an event. And then the day of the event, they gave me a call and they were like, hey, here's the thing. I really don't have the money for this. And I really, it would come out of my pocket. And, I would love to give you some exposure and like all this type of stuff for the thing. And then I went away from that situation feeling like some type of way. I was like, wow, I really feel for this person and would really want to help them achieve their goals and their dreams. But then also the fact that she is paying that out of her own pocket, What does that have to do with me?
Right.
What does that have to do with me? You want a service and you should have to pay for it. I'm trying to make it out here too in these streets. And there wasn't like a really good barter there either. And that's my time, and that's like what my work is worth.
Yeah.
You know? So I ended up declining the offer. And then the next day, she was like, okay, well, I have money now.
Which is it?
Always had it.
Yeah, she always had it. She
Oh.
she always had the money in the first place, you know? So that's just something to say, that you should always have people pay for your work and understand yourself, what your time and what your work is worth. And I'm sure you can like talk even more about that.
Right.
Setting your own rates.
Mm-hmm. That was a great, like, you know.
Great story.
Yeah, it was, I felt for you, honestly.
Yeah, you were there during the
I was. But yes, so establishing your rates, I am a researcher in general. So like I look at what people are charging other freelancers, even agencies, smaller agencies, because you know those bigger agencies are like charging $10,000s of dollars, and I'm like, no one's gonna hire me, one person, to like do that unless they have the budget. It could happen. But you just kind of like see what's out there. Like, you know, nowadays creatives can charge $100 an hour, if not more. But like that's what we're worth base rate, guys. Like just take note of that. But you know, I also keep my client in mind. This goes back to like, who's your audience? Like, so if I'm talking to a small business owner or an individual who like is working with the same kind of money I have, I know I'm not going to charge them as much as a corporation who's got a bunch of money, you know, that they can afford. Like, okay, I'm going to charge you the whole works because I know you have the money and budget for that. So like, I find that like packaging is a really great way to go about charging. So you're like, okay, let's start with what your budget is. I love that question because that's a great way to get like, you know, how much money you're offering.
Right.
What do you feel comfortable spending? It's like, okay, you only have like, let's say $250 for a logo. Well, I charge $500 for a logo. So that's half the price. So this is what I can do for you. That's like the package. Like, okay, I can give you one logo variation and like, you know, the color codes. That's it. But if you got the whole 500, I can give you at least 2 variations. I can give you like, you know, some fonts you can like play around with and color codes. Like you're just kind of building upon it. And the more you have, the more you can get. So they're like, okay. And like kind of breaking down those prices, like usually with flat fees, it's a little more understandable for them, I found. Unless it's like, you know, an hourly event, like how you would do it for photography. It depends on the situation.
But I can still like package things up myself, whether it's like you get like 2 edits, or you get 1 edit, or you get just the raw files, or then I'll do slight adjustments on them, or you know, I can do like a few different like creative tones on the images in addition to everything else.
Exactly. And so like they're like, okay, because if you equate like, well, this percentage of this goes here and this percentage goes here, they're like, okay. So it kind of like, they're like, well, I want more. And I'm like, so that costs more. And so you can kind of build up your prices in that way and justify it. Because you don't want to just give them like, I just want this. And they're like, why? Like I've given spreadsheets to clients, like this will cost this because of this. And this is a range because of the complexity this can be. You know, like I could do like a brochure design, but like how many panels do you need designed? Because that will make the price bigger. So if you talk to them in that way, they're like, oh, okay, I understand where and why I'm spending this much. So I feel like that's been the most successful way to like charge clients. And also because of the hourly, and sometimes you may spend a little more time than you thought, I've like kind of baked in the system where it's like, okay, well, from the original, like the base amount you're paying me, you get 2 edits. Any more than that, especially if it's in the final stages, is an extra $50. And that's where I take back like my time. Like, okay, if you want to get nitpicky, extra 50, extra 50. And I'm like updating my contract, like, here you go, like this is what you want, but you already know. So that's how you kind of make sure like you save yourself, because not every client is going to be a walk in the park. But yeah, and then like the last part of the question, like if you ever get pushback, you can walk away from a client because your services are worth it, and you shouldn't feel like you need to just take something on. Like, I mean, unless the exposure is like real, like they're like, I can introduce you to like Madonna, and you're like, I've always wanted to be Madonna. Like, you know, like weigh it out, but they also should be there.
Yeah, I think you kind of covered this already, but George just asked, how do you recommend setting prices? Is there like, maybe, now obviously you have a really good idea of what your time is worth, but when you were just starting out, one of the things that I've heard for like setting prices of paintings is you take the amount of time that it took you to do the painting and you multiply it by at least minimum wage and you add the cost of the materials. Right. Did you do something like that when you first started out setting rates, or was it more or less like, oh, you give me $50 to do a thing? That sounds right.
Right. I feel like I definitely kind of just took whatever people could give me, but also like tried to be considerate of my time as well. Like I was a little like, I just wanted to do whatever I could at that point. But I also did try to like look up pricing, but I did get a lot of pushback, but I wasn't as confident in myself. But like now I know, like, yeah, I am worth like $500 for a logo. Yeah. Like, yeah, and
that
then
sounds quite reasonable.
Right, especially if you have a portfolio and you're like, well, I've worked with like the Schomburg, like with the New York Public Library. So I kind of have that prestige to like justify my pricing. But, and then like people can still like be like, well, I can get that cheaper. It's like, yeah, well, then you're paying for the quality. Like if you assure a quality product, you're like, then it is worth it. But yeah, I just learned to like kind of stick to my guns and like, you can even like ask your other design friends. Like that's what a network and community of creatives is for. Like, do you feel like this is right? And sometimes people are like, well, if you like the client, you can kind of give them a discount. Or like, if you know that they're gonna come through to like with more work to you, you can be like, okay, well, this is my original price, but because, I like you and we're gonna do more stuff, I can like, I can give you this much. So again, negotiation and bartering are also important in that. Like, it's like a give and take, like, okay, well, I can only do this, but I can like promote you, like, endlessly promote you and recommend you to a client to get you more money. So even if you're not sure about your rates and you're starting to get that confidence, be like, just try to find out what else you can get from that experience to make it really worthwhile.
Do you have any recommendations of what one can do in order to get out of that like imposter syndrome kind of place where you're like afraid to set like expensive rates and things like that because I guess you're not really sure what you're worth,
right?
Yeah, or you don't believe that you might be worth that.
Yeah. Well, one thing is definitely don't stop comparing yourself to other people. Like I get caught in that like, oh, why isn't my art like that? What about this? And it's like, well, everybody has their own style. You have to just embrace what makes you as an artist and like, but like if people just getting the confidence from people saying like, oh, I've seen your stuff, I like it, I want you to do this job for me. That should say a lot. That should make you feel desired and your work worthy because people, like you are in somewhat of a demand. You are still getting gigs, like even if you're not, like maybe you need to just rethink of how you're positioning yourself or like putting yourself out there, what makes you different from someone else. So it's like focusing on what makes you unique and like not equating that as less than other people who may be more successful or their stuff looks a little different. So yeah, just kind of like, just be you and like know like, the right people who are gonna work with you are gonna work with you and they like it's like a back and forth, like the people who know your worth, like they will find you, and yeah, I guess that's all I got for that. Does that help?
Yeah. All right. So where do you go to find your freelance gigs? Where do you look for them?
So I'm actually like super lucky that I have never really had to look for gigs. They kind of just find me.
That's really lucky.
Yeah, like first of all, I went to college and I had a teacher who just loved my work and I still work to him to this day. He gives me he's my other major client that I work with on a regular basis, the comic book artist. And like I consider him a mentor and whatnot. But like he's always like, all right, I can't do this gig, you got time? Here you go. So it's all about it's about networking and recommendations, like kind of like be that art kid in your group where people are like, I saw someone list artists. Like I have people tagging me every so often. Like it'll be like, I'm looking for an artist and someone I haven't talked to since high school will put my name there. Like, oh, okay. Like they don't always come into fruition. Like I've had a lot of like bad recommendations, but again, it's like this is like identifying what could be a potentially disaster client, which is a term we were talking about earlier. But it's still nice that like, I don't know why and how my name like is on the tip of everyone's tongue when they hear designer artist, but that's just how I get gigs.
Oh, that's really fortunate.
Yes, it is, and I know that's not the case for everyone, but yeah, like I guess to like capitalize on it rather than just like luck, it's like networking. Like you're like, oh well, you know, using your social too, and then like you have one client, and then hopefully they can recommend you to another one. So like you do a good job, like that also helps you reach other people because they'll be like, oh well, I had this one designer, I had this one photographer, you should go talk to them. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say that networking is probably the best thing to do. There are also websites that you can use to like get freelance gigs, like Upworks and
Eatlands, is it
Fiverr is one.
Fiverr.
Fiverr. I see ads on that in the subway for that.
Yeah, like
all
all
the
over the
time.
place. Yeah. Or like, I guess even like, I'm sure you could find stuff on like Behance or like Dribble, like all those like art community sites. You can definitely put yourself out there. There's like competitions that you could do. I can't remember the site, but like, 99 Design, I think is one where like you can like enter contests and put your work out there, and the winners of those designs get paid. So that's like a form of getting a gig. Yeah.
I mentioned this in the last live stream, but one of my friends actually participated in an animation contest, and it led to her getting a job.
That's amazing.
Yeah, with the people who like made the contest.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So now she works for like BoJack Horseman.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do more contests, like just even putting your work out there and like, you know, like, yeah, you're gonna get rejections, but once you get that acceptance, like that's also a form of validation, like of your worth and like.
Yeah, I think that's also like a good case study if you're like entering like a competition. Even if you don't win, it's like, you know, was runner up at so and so.
Exactly, and it shows
you
your
can talk about
progress.
yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Be wary of the contest though, and just how much they're asking you to do.
Yeah.
I think Capcom most recently had a contest for Monster Hunter World where it was like they wanted someone to design a monster, a weapon, and the armor set.
Oh my
Wow,
God.
free work.
And what you got was basically some collectibles. There was no cash prize or anything at all.
Oh, no.
And it's like, oh, so I'm just doing design work that's gonna go into your AAA video game for free. That you then have the rights to for future games.
Yeah, like you don't even get any
$millions.
equity in that. I don't think so.
Yeah, that with that comes like merchandising rights.
Right.
And,
Yeah, you're a designer.
You could have been making some money.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, some sketches if you want the rest, hire me. That's how that's
Yeah.
supposed to
yeah,
go.
DeviantArt is famous for that a lot too.
Yeah, such bad.
Yes. Well, that kind of segues nicely into, did you want to ask a question, Ken?
Sure.
Sure. All right. So I think we kind of touched on Upwork, but we have a section on contracts next.
Yeah. Why is it important?
I know, right?
Good question. This is a good one. Why is it important to always have a contract?
Because you can't trust people. As much as you want to, people will like, even your good friend or a family friend will screw you over. Like, okay, I have like this was one of my first like client from hell stories, and it was a family friend on top of it. But like, so I was I was just starting out. I didn't do contracts. Like, she wanted to start like what is it, like a workshop related to being kind for children, and it was also like related to children, so it like broke me because I hate doing stuff. But like, also like when you're picking your gigs, make sure you love the work you're doing, or it's really hard to do it. And I learned that lesson in this too. I was like, designing for children, not for me. So it was like an extremely extensive like project. I actually broke up with her at one point. Yeah, you can break up with clients. I do it all the time. I have a clause in my contract now that says, hey, if you're gonna be a dick, I'm going to actually like break up with you and have that right. And I still get to keep your deposit. And people signed it. So I'm like, you can read it. Like, yes, I protect myself after, that's how I've created the like ultimate contract for myself after all these bad experiences. But yeah, so like she came back because like I can't find any other artists, blah blah blah. Okay, whatever. So I give her a breakdown of what everything costs, and then so she started paying me for it. And I was like, all right, it seems like you've acknowledged that, like, you know, that you're fine with these with these prices if you started paying me.
Mhm.
And then she's disappeared. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm not working on this project right now because I had lost communication with you. Then she comes back and she's like, you've been overcharging me. And she tried to undercut my prices because she was talking to people who charge less. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, you're probably getting a less quality product or whatever, or people can charge whatever they want. But I valued my product to this because I know what I'm worth. And so she was trying to she was like, you need to give me those files. And I was like, I'm sorry, if you're not going to pay me, you're the one who needs me. Like at that point, I had gotten at least $1,000 from that project. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to cut my losses, you know? And then like, she was trying to like, be like, you better give me those original files. And I was like, there's no contract that says I owe you those original files. So luckily I was able to leave this because of the lack of a contract, but I also did not get paid thousands of dollars because there was no contract. So like, when you have that, you like legally protect yourself, because if you could go in a court of law, like, well, I have this contract, she agreed to all of this pricing. Like now I have like price breakdowns in my contracts as well. Like you agree, like I had them initial every sub task of like what I have to do and what the pricing is for. So they know, and they've made like a commitment to that. And I will hold up in court because they'll be like, well, you signed this, clearly like you have to like follow through. So that's why a contract is super important, to make sure you don't get screwed in the end.
Where do you go to get your contracts from?
Yeah.
Is there like a special website for those who are like, I guess, not familiar with that world on where to get it, or don't have like a lawyer? Or
I just made it. I just made it up
Yeah.
based on like my experiences, how to protect myself, and then also I just do research in general. I don't have a specific place I go to, but I was like, okay, I see that, like portfolio rights. Yeah, I want to be able to display my work, like all of that stuff. Like you just kind of pick and choose what works for you. And like, I mean, you just, as long as, if you want a lawyer to check it out, you could, but like, as long as you feel like you've checked all the boxes, like I didn't go to a lawyer with mine, but like I used my contract for my last project, and she was happy with like all the points I went through. She didn't question anything, and she felt comfortable making that commitment to me.
Yeah, when I was freelancing, every time someone screwed me over, I would just add a clause to my contract based upon how they screwed me over.
Yep.
That's not like an ultimate like contract.
Similarly to Alex, I had a freelancing horror story when I was first out of school. I was working 3 different jobs and freelancing on the side. And I had this guy that my school, of all people, got me in touch with.
Wow.
And he wanted 2 character designs, like full turnarounds, and 2 minutes of traditional animation for a commercial. And he was going to give me $1,500. Now, first of all, that's not enough to pay for the animation on its own.
Right.
I mean, we have people in the network who charge like $5,000 for like 30 seconds. So,
Yeah.
Like
Hand drawn.
Yeah, he was already undercutting me by a whole bunch. But I was so desperate for money at the time, I was trying not to get kicked out of my apartment and pay my bills. So I just took the gig. Halfway through the project, he tells me he doesn't like the character designs. I've already begun animating at this point. He had already approved the character designs. He wants me to use these flash dolls that he bought on like some clip art site. So I'm like, okay, so we scrap my character designs. I animate the entire commercial. I send it to him. He goes, I don't like any of this. The client isn't going to like any of this. I'm going to give you $600 for what you've done so far. So a week passes, and he goes, hey, I just want to show you what I ended up coming up with. And I hope this is a good learning lesson for you in the future. He used my animation and threw some camera flashes in there.
Wow. That was a lesson.
He used my exact animation, and this was a commercial that was on like TV across Philadelphia. and I didn't have a contract to protect myself.
Mhm.
Wow.
So a job that was worth probably closer to like $6 or $7 grand, I got $600
$600
for.
Oh my god.
Mhm.
That's a
Yeah.
wild
Yeah.
story.
So just always protect yourself with a contract.
Mhm.
Yeah, my client did the same thing. Like, I was like, "You like these sketches?" She's like, "Yeah, they're approved." And then I went into like the final part, and she was like, "Why does it look like this?" I was
Yeah.
like, "I'm sorry, what?"
You approved it.
I was, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, so yeah.
Mhm. That's why you add $50 on for every
Exactly.
revision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like $100.
Yeah,
for
at that point.
animation. Yeah, don't feel limited to just $50. Like,
Mhm.
Do you have a limit to revisions you have in your contract, or it's just
Um,
limited revisions?
Well, it's like, no, definitely not. No, I got that kind of time. I would never finish any project. No, I limit it to like at least 2, maybe 3, depending on how much I like the client. And then anything after that, especially if it's past the sketch phase where you should have given me your edits, then
Mhm.
I charge an extra 50 for every single edit on top of that. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was freelancing animation, you got 2 free revisions,
Mhm.
and then anything past the 3rd is like,
Yeah.
I'm charging you for that at that point because it's animation.
Mhm.
Takes a really long
Frame it,
time.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So if I'm fixing one frame, I'm then fixing
Every
every
frame.
frame.
Exactly.
Yep. Mine. All right. So, well, it seems like you have your own contract, so this isn't really relevant. But it can be relevant. What are the sorts of things that you should make sure that you either put in a contract, or if somebody like gives you a contract, maybe it's a business or something, I don't know. What should you make sure is in there to protect you before you sign it?
Well, I would definitely pay attention to like ownership, like rights, like because
Mhm.
sometimes, like if you see work for hire, that means anything that you make is owned by the client.
Yep.
So like you can be comfortable with that, but you may want to charge more because you're like, oh, you're gonna get literally everything, and then you can choose for me to like not even be able to like display this, like then I'm just charging you double, you know. But just look out for that because that means like they own everything,
Mhm.
even like your sketches and stuff. Also like again, like I mentioned this before, but I am a big like advocate of portfolio rights, like especially if like, okay, if there's an end to this, I want to be able to use that project in my portfolio to help me get other jobs.
Mhm.
So like I even like that one disaster plan, she was trying to be like, oh well, I don't want you to have those rights. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna do it then. Like I want to be able to put this in my portfolio.
Mhm.
So like you can kind of stand up for it, unless there is like, you know, non-disclosures. And it could be like a very like sensitive situation where it's like, well, if you leak this kind of information, it could like it could prevent us from getting a patent, or like, you know, a competitor could get that information and apply it to theirs. So like you have to understand the situation, but like understand how you feel about it, and like if it's worth like sacrificing some of those rights because of this specific situation. But yeah, those are like the 2 biggest things I would say.
Yeah, you can even put like a timeline on it too.
Yeah,
I know like
right.
my friend who works in the advertising business, he will display work that has been like put out into the world, but then he has like a clause where he's like, I will not publish anything until it is like put out there by the client.
Exactly. Like I just finished that logo design for my last client, and she told me like, okay, well, I'm going to relaunch my website, and then I'm going to do a post that like shouts you out. And I'm like, that sounds like about the timing for me to publish that on my website and like put that in my portfolio. Because I don't want to like also take away the surprise of her big reveal too. Like you just want to be considerate. That wasn't necessarily in our contract, but like even talking it out. Well, I know like the portfolio rights was there, but she didn't express any like concern about when I could put it in my portfolio. But if that's important, then incorporate that into your timetable. I'm trying to think what else. Also I put a clause in my contracts about communication. So it's like if you fall out of like communication for a certain amount of time, then all work on the project is halted. Because you're not going to keep going, because they could be like, well, everything could change. You know, you don't want to have your time wasted. So you have to be like, well, I'm going to be considerate on my communication with you. You have to do the same for me.
Yeah.
Has it ever happened to you
Yeah,
You
like,
kept working and then all of a sudden they finally communicated and it was like, no, I don't like anything, and you just had to start all over again?
well, yeah, it happened with that first disaster client. Like literally almost every disaster that is like why my contract is the way it is because of just that first client. Like, yeah, she like disappeared and then was like, oh, well, here's some of the text that I want to put in this like workbook. I don't even want to like go into the details of this project. It's such a mess, but it was like things were always changing. I was like, well, I'm not going to do anything until you figure everything out because this is wasting my time.
Yeah. I would even like say too, and this may be like kind of related to what you're saying, to have like some kind of like minimum that's going to be in the contract. So say, and I think this happens more times than not. They hire someone for a project, they're doing it, and then all of a sudden they're like 86 in the project. They don't want to continue it. They're like, actually, the whole strategy has changed, and I'm moving forward with this.
Yeah.
You still did the work though, and you should be paid for your time. You know.
Yeah, I have that in my contract. I even have like a cancellation fee. So like, yeah, I still get to keep your deposit, and then you pay me like at least 25% of the rest of it or something like that. I can't remember the specifics, but like, yeah, protect yourself. Like if you want to cancel, if they want to cancel, and make sure you're still getting like paid for what you've done at the very least. So
It's a bulletproof contract you got.
Years of experience.
yeah, honestly. And tears and pain and no, I'm just kidding.
And one horror story.
Yeah.
Oh, you?
One
major, like the first
one
one.
that we talked about.
Yeah.
So I do want to get to taxes.
Yes.
So Thomas, if you can skip over this question, and just go to, because we want to talk about getting paid too. So second bullet point.
Cool. Okay. So, what advice do you have for making sure that you get paid for your work?
Deposits. Make sure you get half of that up front.
Yeah.
Or like I've even offered like, I mean, I'm too nice. So I try to give options. I was like, okay, you give me a 2 payment plan where you give me 50 up front, 50 after, like you get final deliverables. Or you could do like a 3 payment plan where it's like you give me in the beginning, in the midpoint of the project, and at the end. Like that works better for you. And then it like makes it more digestible, like, okay, great, I don't have to just drop all this money. Or like they're scrambling and you're like, I'm waiting for my money, I've done all this work, and you're like feeling anxious. And then also put that payment plan in your contract and have them sign it. Because then that makes sure, like, again, like they have the legal obligation to fulfill that. So that's like my biggest advice for getting paid.
Have you ever, outside of that first horror story, had to give a client like a hard time about paying you?
Chase them with a knife.
Send them threatening emails?
No, I think everybody's ended up paying me. Yeah. But like Chu's the only one who's like such a jerk about it. Yeah.
Well, and do you use like, what's the best method? Do you recommend people use PayPal or checks?
No checks.
No
I had a
It's not
client.
1995.
I had a client who wanted to pay me through checks, and then I moved, and I think did I give her an updated thing, or she didn't tell me she was sending it, so I didn't have the chance to give her my updated.
Oh no!
And it got lost, and I was like, well, I'm not paying for your cancellation fee on the check, and now it's in my contract as well. Like if you're going to send a check and it gets lost, you get to worry about those costs. That's not on me. So it's like, and I just don't like the mail. Like my apartment's super weird about like what mail I do and do not get. So I prefer like PayPal. And then you could do like the business fee services. So it like already like taxes, like the payment or whatever.
It's a fee.
Yeah. And then or cash. I'll take cash.
Envelope of
Yeah,
cash.
right. Like that's what you want. Like you're just gonna say no to cash,
Right?
Yeah.
So,
You don't have to
Cash
report
App.
cash.
Exactly. That's
Oh.
why. Yeah. And that's why cash tips are really good for
Over
the
there.
server.
Yeah.
Solid. Yeah.
Speaking of reporting, taxes.
So, this one.
So when do you suggest freelancers start thinking about filing taxes?
I'm like super bad about this, but like honestly, the sooner the better. I mean, you should definitely keep like just track how much money you're getting throughout the year, so you have it like in one spreadsheet or one note, and you can have like a point of reference that makes it easier to kind of like look through while you're filing your taxes. And again, if you do it sooner rather than later, you can like recruit help because you know maybe you're like I don't know what to do, and you like need to hire an accountant, but then like the end of tax season is like 2 days later and you're kind of screwed. So yeah, like don't procrastinate like me. Even though I kind of just do it on my, I'm really reckless about that. Like, I'm sorry guys, but do it the right way. Yeah, but I'm giving good advice.
That's
Saying,
the
"Do my
important
bad." I'm like, don't be bad like me.
So what sorts of things like have you used as like tax deduction? So you mentioned your
Oh, yeah.
website.
My website, my laptop, like tablets. What else? Even like art supplies. I was like, hey, I'm making art out of this. I'm an artist. I'm gonna write that off. Like
Mhm.
printers, ink, especially if you're printing stuff. Like anything you use. Like I was even like wondering if, I'm not sure if this is true, but like anything related to education, I'm pretty sure you could probably like write off. Like if you go to a conference
Or a seminar,
yeah,
take a class.
yeah, exactly. Those are all like tax deductible. And also if you have like a space in your like apartment or home that is primarily used for like working, like your home office, you can write a percentage of that off, like a percentage of your rent and your utilities.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
You can't sleep in that space.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Like, you can't use it for anything else. You just can work in it. But if it's just your workspace, you can like, it can be tax deductible.
That's interesting.
Do your taxes.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, chaotic canine culture also has some really good advice. Make a separate savings account, put a percentage of each
Yeah.
payment into it
Yeah.
to save up for taxes because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe as a freelancer, you're pretty much always paying taxes
Yeah, unless you-
on April 15th.
Rack up those taxes. I definitely chopped off like a couple hundred off my like payment from like tax supplements.
Mhm.
So they're very useful to help
That helps.
alleviate that
Yeah.
payment.
Mhm. Yeah, I ripped some stuff off,
Right.
and it helped me out.
And this part's good for all of you guys who aren't freelancers but are just YouTubers. You're all
Right.
independent
Yeah.
contractors.
Oh, yeah.
You guys got
So-
file taxes someday.
You're gonna have to file your taxes too.
And
Yep.
new cameras and stuff you get, or like
Mhm.
backdrops, like make sure you keep those receipts. Write that off.
The software you use.
Flash
Yeah.
tablets.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you have your website up and running, you
Yeah.
know, those monthly payments.
Even like I have like video in my, like for your the demo rolls, if you need like a Vimeo account, you keep note of that subscription because you could write that off because that's related to your portfolio.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
things
Fun
that
stuff
are
to get
not
right up.
included, the lunch that you got, or like.
Oh, no, business lunches though.
Oh,
If you
there
have
you
lunch
go.
with a client, keep those receipts. If you travel there, keep those receipts.
That's true.
Yeah.
Right.
People always make
Especially
fun of me because I was
travel.
like, you can write it off, and I was like, I'm not being a jerk. Like, you could actually write it off.
So if you have a business lunch with a client and you take the subway to get there, you can write off your subway ticket.
You sure can. Subway,
Yeah. Oh,
taxi,
yeah.
Any
uh,
I wanted to say yes.
Ubers,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. So if you're in New York City, come get lunch with us.
Yeah.
Write it off.
Where are we right now?
We're kind of
Second
just
half,
talking
yeah.
about taxes. We might have already hit the rest of
Oh,
those
I
bullets.
see. Recommend Sarah. Yeah, you should save up for taxes.
Yeah.
Duh. Sorry. And yeah, it's just like, what else should freelancers know?
Yeah. In general, just like file as early as possible.
Mhm.
So you're, as a freelancer with multiple different clients, you are getting multiple 1099s each
Sometimes.
year.
I
Sometimes.
get it under the books, which is great. I'm
Ah.
sorry I didn't say that. Everything's definitely checked.
Yeah, this won't go public.
No.
Uh,
No, yes, I definitely, even like if I don't get a 1099, I'll still be like, there's like a section you can add for additional, and I'll add like the extra, like, okay, well, I made an extra 200, 400 here, but they
Uh-huh.
didn't give me like official paperwork for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I swear.
Right.
Yeah.
I even recommend going to an accountant because the tax laws do change
Mhm.
every now and then. They definitely changed this
They
past
changed
year.
this past
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, and the ways that you file taxes changed as well, and it definitely affected people who file W-2s and 1099s, and I didn't know everything there was to know, or even like what I was not able to and was able to write off with the new tax law, and an accountant was definitely able to like help me deal with all of that and file. So if you can find one, they're not that expensive.
Where do you find them?
Word of mouth.
Ask around.
Friend of a friend.
Friend of a friend. Oh,
Yeah.
friend. Yeah. Can you write that off?
So,
Probably.
Ask the
I think you might be able to because
It's a business expense.
yeah, exactly. Like, because I think I think you have to like pay for like, if you're doing stuff in New York or like whatever state, and if you have to pay that extra through into it, I think like you can write off like that charge the next year. So.
That makes sense.
Toad King Studios asks, if you're doing freelance, at what point is it just side income, and at what point does it become a small business, especially if we are selling stuff online, like an Etsy shop, for instance?
Well, I've been like procrastinating opening my Etsy shop, so unfortunately I can't answer that question. But I'm sure there's like a certain amount of like revenue that you're making where you probably have to make that switch. So I would look up like where that cap is. Like if you're making like tens of thousands of dollars, you probably should switch to being a small business owner.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with like, you know, when you should, I guess, incorporate is the word? You know, like people usually file as sole proprietorships, but when you want to like be an LLC, if you're big enough for that, like I don't know what protections it gives you, even though I should.
I think it also depends on like if you have people working for you too. So that's also where you need to start reconsidering how you categorize yourself. Yeah.
Cool.
Eventually I'll get there and I'll do a follow-up and I'll be like, so I am a small business. Those are the goals, but right now.
Foxy Design LLC.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Very professional.
Right? Very legit. Cool. Any other questions?
I think that takes care of all of
Yeah,
them.
Yeah.
Joe Whimsy, we kind of talked about marketing tips for
So
freelancers
you can
and
just
clients.
rewind when you get a
Yeah,
chance.
ultimately it's putting your work out there and networking.
Yeah, don't feel like you even have to advertise. I mean, if you want to do the extra, like put a Facebook ad of like one of your beautiful prints, like buy, like you can, but if you really push your social, use the right hashtags and like cross promote, collab, have like your clients make sure they like shout you out for everything you do, like that's free marketing right there.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question about that. What do you say about putting your work out there, but like showing work that maybe you're like at the beginnings of like your freelance career. Maybe like you're like charging people like a little bit of money, and then your stuff is not as fine-tuned. And you know that, and you know that you're getting better. Should you still put yourself out there, or should you still like wait until like you feel like you have stuff that you're like, yes, this is the stuff that I want to like sell. This is the.
I'd say just put yourself out there. Like, it doesn't matter like where you're at, because you could. The thing is like, I'm a perfectionist, so like if I waited around till I was super ready to like put my work out there until it was super refined, until I figured it all out, I wouldn't be freelancing or like doing anything.
Yeah.
So it's like waiting around doesn't help. Like it also like you'll find people who are like, oh, I like that caricature you did, or I like this like style. Like you will find people who want your stuff at whatever state as an artist you are in. And that will also motivate you to keep doing more and getting better. And then like also justifying why your prices are getting like increasing. So yeah, I don't think there's any place to use. I mean, unless you're just drawing stick figures, you should probably reevaluate, like.
I've seen some pretty good stick figures.
I mean, if they're pretty good, like that's like your thing. Like if you make like you're like, I do comic strips and they're stick figures and they're hilarious and people want to buy prints of that, then sell it. Who's stopping you?
Toad King Studios. Alex, you can speak on this. I can speak on this too. If you're an indie creator with no budget but trying to bring some money in, at what point should you be expected to pay the people you work with? As soon as you can. Do not take advantage of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And like also, it's that negotiation factor. Like, well, what can you do? Like, can you give them a free service? Like, like Nick, we were doing that. Like, okay, well, if you don't have money for this, like, I can make you a business card and you can do like a photo shoot. Like, that's like equal trade. Like, trying to do that at the very least. Like, okay, well, I can't pay you now, but I could like update your reel and do that for free. So like, do what you can to help support your community, even if you can't like have money to do that.
Yeah. Similarly, like I've drawn characters for photographers at my school because they wanted a cartoon version of themselves on their website for some reason. But in exchange, they would, you know, oh, like come model for me and I'll take pictures for you.
Yeah, exactly.
On the flip side, I've done character designs for like indie game devs. I hesitate to even call them that.
Yeah.
And it's like, if your game doesn't come out, you're not a developer.
Right.
You developed nothing.
Yeah.
But like I've done that, and it's just like, oh man, I'll pay you when I can. I'll pay you when you can. And it's like, if you're going, you shouldn't take on business if you're not prepared to do the things businesses need to do, like pay people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally
Which is,
agree.
it's part of the, I don't freelance anymore because of it. I just like got burned one too many times.
Yeah,
Also
it's up to
Strong
you.
contract.
I think bartering with other artists is really awesome and super fun. And also, you know, you want to be able to establish a portfolio if you don't have one already, and that's a great way to do it, and also get awesome services in the process.
Right. Another thing that you could possibly do, if maybe you're like starting a video series and you're expecting it to become big, give the people who you're working with who you can't pay yet, give them a stake in it.
Yes, that is.
You know, because that way, first of all, it gives them a reason to want to stick with you, because if you're getting paid eventually, they're getting paid too. But you know, that's something of value that you can offer them right now.
Yeah, totally agree.
Great. Well, I think that brings us to 3 p.m. Thanks as always, guys. And if you guys think of any more questions in the meantime, you know where to find us. You can support at Frederator, support on your dashboards, or the Discord. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So much fun.
All right. And we will see all of you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.